The Man from Nowhere, a Mick and Mac mystery. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations, and you're listening to another Whodunit Wednesday, where we step into the world of classic detective fiction. This tale is inspired by the real-life Somerton Man case. Go back to the golden era of detective fiction and enjoy stories in the tradition of the greats of writing, from Agatha Christie to Raymond Chandler to John Creasy. These are short stories I hope you enjoy. The Man from Nowhere, Chapter 1, Dead in the Water. The body washed up just after dawn, the kind of quiet tact that made the whole thing feel deliberate. It was a longshoreman who spotted him first, slumped against the breakwater like a man waiting for a ferry that never came. He wasn't bloated, bruised, or battered. He wasn't even wet. Not really. Just slightly damp around the cuffs, like he leaned too far over a bar sink. He wore a gray wool suit, finely cut, brown leather shoes, polished, no hat, no ID, no wallet. His tie was still knotted and centered. His watch had stopped at 3:12 a.m. His expression was peaceful, like he'd slipped out of something important, a meeting, a war, a life. By 7 o'clock a.m., the harbor police had roped off the area. By 7:30, the press was sniffing around. And by 8:02, Detectives Mick McCarthy and Mac McNeely were standing on the dock, staring at the dead man like he owed them an explanation. "He doesn't look robbed," Mac said, squinting against the rising sun. "He doesn't look drowned either," Mick replied. Mac crouched beside the body. "No bruising, no torn threads, no scrapes. Doesn't even look like he tried to swim." "He didn't," said Dr. Kendall, the coroner, arriving with his usual grim smile and a thermos of terrible coffee. "No water in the lungs. This fellow didn't drown. He died before he even touched the lake." Mick glanced back toward the line of warehouses behind them. Nothing moved but a gull, circling with more curiosity than menace. "No ID?" Mick asked. "None," Kendall said. "No labels on the suit either. Someone went to a lot of trouble to erase him." Max stood, dusting off his knees. "Well, that's considerate. Murder with style." Kendall raised an eyebrow. "Who said anything about murder?" "No signs of illness. No visible wounds, no pills. No bruises. No ID," Mick said, ticking off with his fingers. "Unless this is the neatest heart attack in history, I'm leaning toward foul play." "Suit's English," Mac said. "Cut like something out of Savile Row. Shoes, too. No scuffs, no slush. But if he walked here, where's the salt, the splash, the wear?" Mick stared at the man's hands. Clean, pale, unmarked. No calluses, no ink, no scars. Just blank. Then he noticed it. The edge of the man's inner jacket pocket, ever so slightly askew. Not ripped, not empty, just misaligned. He reached in slowly and pulled out a small slip of paper, folded in half. On it were symbols. Cyrillic mostly, or what looked like Cyrillic. But not quite. Some letters were upside down, others reversed. A few weren't letters at all. Just odd slashes and dots arranged with unnerving precision. Mick handed it to Mac. "Well," Mac said, blinking at it, "either he left us a riddle, or someone dropped a typewriter into a blender." They rode back to Division Street in silence. The body was taken to the morgue. The slip of paper was sealed in an evidence envelope. The shoes, as polished as marble, left no trail. No one knew who he was. No one knew where he came from. And as Mick would later put it, the city didn't even know it was keeping a secret. Not yet. Chapter 2. A Ghost Without a Name. By noon the man had been fingerprinted, photographed, and filed. And still, he didn't exist. No hits on municipal records, no military matches, no missing persons, no known aliases. The photographs being sent to Ottawa, Washington, and London. The answer was the same from all three. No record found. He's a clean slate, Max said, tossing the file on the table in the squad room. No name, no prints, no past. If we hadn't fished him out ourselves, I'd say he was never alive to begin with. Mick looked over the morgue report. You ever seen a cleaner autopsy? Not unless the guy died from boredom. Kendall says his stomach was completely empty, not even coffee. You've got to be trying to starve like that. He wasn't sick, no poison, no wounds, just stopped. Mick tapped the report. Shoes still shined, cuffs pressed. He didn't walk to the lake. Somebody dumped him, Max said, or he was carried. Mick looked out the squad room window toward the harbor. Gray sky, gray water, gray buildings, all still. Or, he said slowly, he got off a ship. They were halfway through a second round of coffee, strong, burnt, and hot enough to take the skin off when she arrived. Evelyn Whitmore didn't knock. She never did. She slipped through the door like cigarette smoke, and stood there with a gloved hand on her hip. Dressed in black and navy, sharp as a razor and twice as quiet. Is this about the harbor body, she asked. Mac blinked. Hello to you, too. I'll take that as a yes, she said, crossing to the table, laying a slim file folder between them. You're not going to like this. Mick opened it. A photo of the cipher. At least one very similar to the one from the dead man's pocket. Stared back at him, now annotated with tiny writing notations in Eve's precise handwriting. You translated it? Mick asked. Part of it, Eve said. The structure's familiar. We used something similar during the war. It's what's called a book cipher. Each symbol corresponds to a word or letter, pulled from a specific edition of a specific book. Without knowing which book, you're guessing in the dark. So it's a message, Max said, just written in invisible ink and crossed fingers. Eve nodded. Here's the part you really enjoy. It's not military grade. It's civilian trained, which means your man was either a courier or someone pretending to be. Pretending, Mick said. Plenty of freelancers these days, he replied. Double agents, private operators. Not just the Russians or the British anymore. There's a market now. Secrets are currency. Mac tilted back in his chair. So what's a spy courier doing dead in our dock with clean shoes and an empty stomach? Eve didn't answer. Instead, she took out a second sheet of paper, grainy black and white, a photo of a ship, partially obscured by fog. Its hull bore no name. Its flag wasn't visible. But the timestamp typed in the corner read 3:08 a.m., 4 minutes before the dead man's watch had stopped. What is this? Mick asked. A surveillance photo, Eve said. Taken from a rooftop near Pier 9. The ship arrived without clearance. No manifest, no port call. Docked for less than 30 minutes, then vanished into the fog. You think that's where our man came from? Mac asked. I don't think, Eve said. I know. Why did you have surveillance on the docks? Mick wondered aloud. Let me guess. That's need to know, and we don't need to know. Mac chimed in. Eve leaned forward. He wasn't supposed to be found, but he didn't just fall overboard. He tried to escape. Something scared him. Something bad. At night, Mick sat alone on his desk, flipping through the evidence photos. The body, the code, the shoes. A man dressed like a diplomat, carrying a message no one could read. Dying in a city that hadn't asked for him. A ghost without a name. He didn't know it yet, but somewhere, across the water, another ghost was already on its way. Chapter 3. The Unseen Ship. The harbor didn't show up on most maps the way it really looked. On paper, it was clean lines and long piers. But in person, it was smoke and rust, thick ropes and half-sunk crates, the clang of metal on metal, and the distant growl of freighters headed for somewhere else. At 6:45 the next morning, Mick Mack stood on Pier 9 with a clipboard, a thermos of something that might have once been coffee, a dock worker named Reggie, who'd been up all night. "I didn't see no ship," Reggie said, which would have been more convincing if he hadn't followed immediately with, "But I did hear one." Mac raised an eyebrow. "You heard a ship?" "Yeah," Reggie said, scratching his neck. "Weird, right? Horn blast, real low, around 3:15. Wasn't scheduled. I remember because I was on smoke break and thought I was going nuts." "See anything?" Mick asked. "Fog was thick as chowder, but when I came back 50 minutes later, the mooring lines and slip B were wet. Coiled wrong, too. Like someone pulled them off in a hurry." Mick scribbled something in his notebook. Mac leaned against a stack of shipping pallets. "Nobody logged it?" Reggie shrugged. "Only 2 guys on overnight watch. One's asleep half the time. The other was dealing with a crate fire over at the grain elevator. Place runs on muscle and miracles. You want paperwork, go talk to Customs." They did. Customs hadn't seen a thing. No logbook entry, no radar pings, no name on any list. The ship had come and gone without a footprint. Except for the man it left behind. That afternoon, back at the station, Mick stared at the map of the harbor wall. Thumbtacks, strings, the whole 9 yards. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. Mac was across the room, flipping through dock reports. "We're chasing a ghost freighter. You want to make sense?" Mick didn't answer. He tapped a photograph, the timestamp still Eve had given them. She was here at 3:08. Our dead man's watch stopped at 3:12. "You think he jumped?" "Or was pushed," Mac said. "But if he did jump, why not yell, splash, run?" "He was already dying," Mick said. "Poison?" "Starvation, maybe. Eve said he hadn't eaten. He might have been sick." Mac leaned back, sick and scared, which makes him desperate. Desperate enough to try to swim to shore, even in a suit. "He almost made it," Mac said, "which is more than you can say for this next guy." Mick looked up. Mac held up a new report, grim-faced. "Another body. Different pier, same story, no ID. Clean closed. Polished shoes. Where?" "Slip 4. Found about an hour ago." Mick stood. "Cause of death?" Mac handed over the preliminary notes. "Same coroner, same call. Unknown." But this one, Mac hesitated, then added, "He had something in his sock." Mick raised an eyebrow. Mac held up a clear evidence bag, and inside it, another folded slip of paper. Identical size, same handwriting, same cryptic symbols. 30 minutes later, Dr. Kendall confirmed what they feared. "No signs of trauma, no blood, no struggle," the coroner said, his voice low over the body. "Just like the first." He peeled back the sheet. The second man looked younger, thinner, A wiry build. Similar suit, though a slightly cheaper make. The same kind of shoes. Too perfect for a man found face down in a working harbor. This isn't random, Mick said quietly. This is planned. We're covered up, Mac added, and we're already 2 bodies behind. Back at Division Street, Eve waited in their office, arms folded, eyes sharp. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just pointed to the new cipher and said, "Now we have 2 pieces of the puzzle." Mick poured coffee. "You recognize this one too?" "It's the same code but different page," she said. "They were using paired messages. If we can figure out the book." Mac exhaled through his nose. "We find out what they were carrying or who they were running from." Eve nodded. "Or both." Outside, fog was rolling in again. Somewhere another ship crept past the breakwater, unlisted and unnoticed. But next time, Mick and Mac would be waiting. Chapter 4. Ghosts of the Code. The Department of Mathematics at the University of Toronto smelled faintly of chalk dust, burnt coffee, and quiet panic. Kind of place where people spent days arguing about the nature of primes, but misplaced their socks. Professor Thaddeus Moorcroft, head of cryptographic theory and applied number systems, a title longer than most of his lectures, was halfway through a marmalade sandwich when Mick and Mac arrived. "Don't touch the desk," he said without looking up, "or the chairs, or the floor, if you can manage it." Mac blinked. "You want us to hover?" "No, I want you not to disrupt the fragile web of genius that barely holds this office together." He took another bite and gestured at a table littered with open books, curling papers, and at least 3 half-solved crossword puzzles. "You brought something encoded, yes? Let me see." Mick handed over the 2 slips. Moorcroft slid his glasses down, adjusted his cardigan like a general donning a sash, and squinted. "Ah, now this is interesting." "I thought you'd say that," Mac muttered. "Book cipher. Definitely. These symbols represent page-line word triads. Standard Cold War practice, especially for non-field agents. But whoever did this wasn't using just any book." He rummaged through a pile and pulled out a battered paperback. "The Master and Margarita," Moorcroft announced. "Russian edition. Samizdat print. You can tell by the way this character's reversed. Printers in Moscow during the early 40s made that mistake consistently." "Wait," Mac said. "You had that book already?" Moorcroft looked up, grinning. "I've been waiting 15 years for someone to walk in with something like this." 3 hours, 1 marmalade smudge translation later, Moorcroft had it. Message 1 from the first body. "Courier compromised. Not safe. Meet contact. 1 passphrase. Firebird." Message 2 from the second body. "Do not trust the handler. Contact rerouted. Cargo must not reach Ottawa." Mick stared at the translations. So one of them was defecting. "We're trying to warn someone," Moorcroft said. The other was following instructions from a different source. 2 messages, same code, opposing directions, Mac said. "That's not a chain of command. That's a double cross." That night, back at Rosie DeLuca's bar, Mick and Mac sat in the corner booth, staring in the kind of drinks that chased thoughts to the bottom of a glass. "She knew," Mac said. "Eve, from the start." Mick nodded. She knew someone had broken the network, but she wasn't sure which side had done it. Rosie slid a fresh bottle onto the table. You boys look like you're solving international espionage. Or the wrong end of a crossword. Both, Mick said. You want advice? Always. Rosie leaned in. Find out who gave the order. Doesn't matter which body came first. Somebody signed a death warrant, someone local. Mac leaned back, staring at the ceiling. We need to find the handler. Mick agreed, before the cargo reaches Ottawa. Outside across town, a man in a long coat stepped onto the gangway of a third unlisted ship. In his pocket, a forged Canadian passport, a photograph of Eve Whitmore, and a third piece of the code. The game wasn't over. It was just getting crowded. Chapter 5. The Harbor Trap. The fog rolled in like it had something to hide. By midnight, the waterfront was cloaked in thick silver. Cranes loomed like gallows. Every lamp flickered like it knew a secret. Pier 12, long closed for repairs, buzzed with quiet tension. Mick stood with binoculars on the roof of a nearby warehouse. Coat collar turned up, breath fogging in the cold air. Mac was stationed near the dock entrance, pretending to be an unusually twitchy night watchman with a thermos and a wrench. Eve was in the shadows, between freight crates, a pistol tucked into her handbag, and a small transmitter clipped to her coat. They weren't just watching the harbor tonight. They were waiting for it to blink. At 12:47 a.m. it did. A black ship, no name, no lights, slipped silently into the berth like a whisper with a hull. No one hailed it, no port call, just the rhythmic splash of water against steel and the low rumble of engines idling in the dark. Then came the man. Trench coat, gloves, brisk stride. He stepped off the gangplank like he owned the dock and turned inland. Mac radioed up. Target moving, no suitcase, carrying something under the coat. Let him pass, Eve whispered. We want to know who he's meeting. Mick tracked the man as he moved past stacks of shipping crates. A second figure stepped from the shadows, younger, thinner, holding a folder. They spoke quietly, too quiet to catch. But when the first man handed over the object under his coat, a leather satchel, something shifted. Mick couldn't explain it. A twitch, a pause, like the night itself exhaled wrong. And then it happened. The second man grabbed the satchel and ran. The first shouted, drew a pistol, fired. Go, Eve snapped. Chaos erupted. Mac took off after the runner, barreling between crates and ducking flying bullets. Eve darted forward, her gun drawn, and Mick descended the warehouse stairs 3 at a time. The satchel man sprinted toward the edge of the pier, and when he realized he couldn't outrun them, he turned and threw it into the harbor. It hit with a dull splash and vanished. Mac tackled him mid-turn, and then he hit the dock hard. The runner gasped, spat blood, and muttered something in Russian, just before Eve reached them and pressed the barrel of her pistol to his neck. Tell me who sent you, she said coldly. He grinned. Not who. What? Then he slumped unconscious. 2 hours later, the harbor patrol fished a satchel out of the water. Inside, microfilm rolls sealed in plastic, a forged Canadian passport, and a third cipher slip, perfectly dry, vacuum sealed. The same symbols, the same paper, but this one had something new scrawled across the top in pencil. Do not trust Orchid. Eve's face changed when she read it. She turned to Mick, quiet but firm. It's a code name. Orchid. It was decommissioned in 44. Who was it, Mac asked. She didn't answer. Back at Division Street, Mick laid out the 3 ciphers, slips in a triangle. Courier 1, dead. Courier 2, silenced. Courier 3, almost escaped, but not far enough. And the cargo? Blueprints, Eve confirmed. Scientific, sensitive. The kind of thing nations kill to possess. Or bury. Where were they going, Mick asked. Eve exhaled. Ottawa. The courier was meeting a contact high up. Someone feeding information out of the government. We just don't know who. We have a name now, Max said. Orchid. Not a name, Eve replied. A ghost. The question is, whose ghost? Outside, the fog lingered. Somewhere in Ottawa, someone was waiting for a satchel that would never come. Someone else was already planning their next move. Chapter 6. The Final Message. Professor Moorcroft didn't sleep. When Mick and Mac returned to his cluttered office, sometime near dawn, he was still there, half buried in notebooks and Russian novels, fingers stained with ink and marmalade. I've got it, he said without preamble. They were using 3 parts of a single message. A triptych cipher. You needed all 3 slips to unlock the 4th. 4th, Mick said. Moorcroft handed over a final transcription, still warm from the typewriter. Final message decoded. Do not proceed to Ottawa. Orchid is compromised. You are instructed to disappear. If you are reading this, they found you first. Mick read it again, slower, letting the weight of it settle. Mac exhaled. So our man, the first one, he was trying to defect. Knew the network was blowing. Tried to warn someone. And died for it. Orchid was the leak, Mick said quietly. The traitor. And someone in Ottawa was expecting that satchel, Eve added, entering with her usual quiet grace. And this time with something new in her voice. Urgency. Mick handed her the message. She read it once, closed her eyes, and nodded. I know who it is, she said. The real name. The real position. But I can't tell you. You can't, Mac said. I shouldn't, Eve replied. But I will tell you this. They won't be in Ottawa much longer. By morning, they'll be elsewhere. Mick looked at her. Will they pay for what they've done? Eve met his gaze. They won't be attending any more briefings. That was enough. At the morgue, Dr. Campbell was sipping his usual awful coffee when Mick and Mac dropped by with one last request. We want the nameplate to read, John Doe. Never forgotten, Mick said. Kendall raised an eyebrow. You getting sentimental? No, Mick said. Just making sure someone remembers. The man had no family, no friends, no passport. But he had a story, and they'd found it piece by piece. Later, as morning broke over the lake, the 3 of them, Mick, Mac, and Eve, stood by the harbor wall where it all began. The fog was lifting, slowly, reluctantly. Funny, Mac said, how a man with no name can end up saying so much. Eve nodded. He didn't talk, but he left a message. That's more than most. Mick watched the freighter slide past the horizon. You think this is over? No, Eve said, but this chapter is. She handed Mick a small envelope. Inside, a photograph of a man boarding a plane. A man with a scar under one eye. The third courier. Alive, missing. Someone helped him escape, Eve said. He was carrying a copy of the microfilm. We may never know where he went. Mick tucked the photo away. Max sighed. Guess that's why they call it the Cold War. Back at Rosie's, they took their usual booth. No fanfare, no speeches. Rosie slid over 2 drinks and nodded toward the bar's newest decoration. A small frame clipping on the wall. Unidentified man found at harbor. City police investigating. Below it, in Rosie's handwriting. The quiet ones speak volumes. Here's to listening. The final line from Mick was, he came here to disappear, but we made sure he left a mark. And Max spoke up, and hey, not a single handbag in sight this time. Thank you for listening. This has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast.